Good morning, parents. It's really nice to see you. I always love getting a chance to do presentations for 8th grade parents especially because it's a whole new batch of parents and students coming in. And so it's really nice to see some new faces. Thank you for sitting at the front. We appreciate that. So my name is Ronnie Sherrier. I'm one of the 4 high school counselors at KIS. I'll be working with your students. We started doing this presentation I think 3 years ago. And we just realized that there were so many questions that were coming up earlier than we were addressing them. And now, having been in KIS for 5 years, just knowing that there's just a lot of conversations that happen outside of school, and that information, that game of telephone gets passed from one person to another, to their kid, to their friend, back to a parent, and a lot of the information, I think, can start out as accurate or come from a good place, but after it's been passed around a little bit, it can be warped a little bit. And so we wanted to do this presentation to, one, try to address some of that, right? How do we get good information? How do we find those sources? But then also give you the opportunity to send us, hey, I've heard this. And so this presentation, while the slides will look similar, is in response to the feedback that we got from you and for those that are going to watch this online about some of the rumors and myths that they had heard. And so we're going to hopefully try to help calm everybody over the next 45 minutes or so.
And that's just it, right? It's the stress. We really kind of want to ease the stress of it. I'll introduce myself. I am Vicki Haas. I'm one of the counselors here. This is my first year here at KIS, but I've been in the international and the U.S. world for quite some time. This is my 14th year as a counselor. So we've all are very well versed and kind of really, again, just want to ease your mind. This is more of a conversation of just like, take a deep breath. We're going to share the things that actually are accurate opposed to kind of listening to all the myths.
And good morning, my name is Chuck Krugler, and this is also my first year at KIS, but my 31st year in Korea. So I've been here a long time at a couple of different international schools, ending up here at the best, I feel.
So we've got a lot of different experiences up here. I've been here at KIS for a long time. We've had people who have been in Korea even longer, people who have worked in different countries. And so there's a lot of different viewpoints. But I would say a commonality is that a lot of these, when we hear them, we all kind of have a chuckle and go, okay, let's talk about what's actually going on here. So, as we start, right, what is a myth? What is a rumor, right? These ideas that get passed around. And again, I think these conversations that are happening both within the parent community, but also our student community, the information's meant to be helpful, right? A lot of times we give information or we say, have you heard about this or did you know this, right? It's to try to help prepare, whether it's a friend, whether it's your child, a child's friend, all of that information is meant to be helpful. But when it's inaccurate or maybe not completely true for that particular person, it can cause a lot of anxiety, right? A lot of stress and a lot of worry. And that, again, is what we're here to try to address. Mm-hmm. So let's start with one of the first ones. I love this. So KIS does not give good grades, and that makes our kids look bad. I have also heard that KIS inflates grades, and so makes universities think that it's too easy for our students. And thank you to the person who sent this in. This is something that I have heard since the first day I got here. So, Vicki, do you want to jump in on this one?
Okay, so KIS doesn't give good grades. I really want you, as you're going through the high school, your kids are earning grades, right? I think that's really important. We don't give the grades. Your students are earning the grades. They're working towards an achievement. They're working towards their progress. And universities as a whole, when they're kind of looking, they look at KIS. They understand the rigor. We connect with the admissions representatives that are coming here to campus so that they have a better understanding of what KIS looks like, what their academic profile looks like, what our rigor, what our AP classes look like. And it's really important that the grades, while they are a significant piece to the application process, like KIS not giving good grades does not equate to not getting to good institutions. It really is just about understanding that KIS is our grading system. Your child earned an A- because your child earned an A-. They did X to get that. If all of our students were to get A's, there would be no differentiation. Then the universities would say, what is actually happening here? Why are all of our students getting good grades? And so the learning process is that they are understanding getting an A-, getting a B+, or the variance, that shows that our students are learning and that KIS is actually doing a good job and really promoting our students to be independent learners rather than just giving out grades. You want an institution to believe that we are rigorous too. And so we attach a school profile to every application that a student applies to. And what that school profile entails is all the classes that are offered at KIS, our grading scale, our GPAs. It shares more data of like how many students graduate, how many students are going to X universities, or it gives a list of universities. And that provides context for a university, that what KIS is doing. So comparatively, your student has taken 6 APs and all of these are offered. They can max out at 7 or 8, whatever it may be. They understand the context of your student's application, or grades. So it's not that we do give good grades. I think maybe that's the bottom line. We do give good grades, but you really want a university to see that your student has earned those grades rather than being given those grades, because then their application becomes, no, great. KIS is not really earning your grades. That's what you want the school to see.
And I think one of those big myths is this idea of, GPA, I think is one that parents, students can fixate on because it's an easy number, right? If we can just look at a number and we can compare, okay, 375, 381. 381's higher, easy to understand. Universities don't look at it that way. They're really looking at how did the student get to that number, right? What were the classes they took? Is there a change as they're going from 10th grade to 11th grade to 12th grade? Where are they getting their best grades? Where are they struggling? Where have they improved? How are they challenging themselves? And then within the context of what are they applying for? What are their strengths? Where are they getting their best grades, and what are they trying to do, right? All of these pieces are going to be a part of it. I remember hearing, some parent at one of our coffees was, well, the other school, they give a 5.0 weighting, and so their kids have a higher GPA, so the schools are going to look at them more favorably, right? And again, I can understand where that comes from, right? Of seeing like, oh, these other kids, some of them have 4.7, 4.8. But a GPA is a made-up number. Mm-hmm. Tomorrow, we could make our weighted GPA out of 74, right? And it wouldn't change anything. The universities are still going to look at the transcript, look at the courses, look at the grades, and then look beyond that as well in understanding who they are and trying to predict what type of student they'll be on their campus. So again, there's so much that goes into it, but I do know where that fear comes from. It makes a lot of sense.
Right, and I would just say before becoming a high school counselor, I worked in university admissions for 11 years. So as part of that, I was reviewing applications. And as Vicki said, it's in the context of the high school. So I was never comparing a student from KIS with a student from SFS or SIS. It was always in the context of, did the student at KIS make the most of their opportunities, their academic opportunities? And I would understand how many AP courses a student was allowed to take here, which is different than at another school. I was talking to a counselor from another school in Seoul, and their limit is 3 for 12th grade. And so, again, it's in the context of each school that the admissions decisions are made. We're not comparing other schools with our students.
Mm-hmm.
And that limit at the other school isn't, I know some parents might go, oh my God, it's only 3. But again, it's the individual school's policies are what the universities want to know so they can see how a student does within that context, right? And what's available and how they take advantage of that.
So that profile, I promise you, is like the holy grail for an admissions rep. If they have not been, most have been to our campuses multiple times so that they know exactly what KIS is offering. But they go back and check, is anything updated? But they review that first before they kind of go into their applications because they really want to have an understanding of what KIS is offering.
Okay. Our next myth. Extracurricular activities, research papers, summer programs, and volunteer work are important for getting into college. So we got a bunch of questions related to different pieces, whether it was summer programs, research papers, extracurriculars, clubs. So we folded it all into one myth, and this is one that comes up a lot. So, Chuck, you
Sure.
want to jump in on this
I'd
one?
be glad to, sure. There's no formula for getting into a university in the United States. They operate under what's called holistic review, where they would look at all elements of the application. And so being involved in activities is one element that they're looking at. But again, there's no formula. So the National Association that we're a part of did a survey last year, 2 years ago.
I think this one's 2 years ago, yeah.
Of what universities, what's important to them as they review applications for admission. And so you can see, and the list is longer than what's listed here on the screen. And so, again, it's what does your son or daughter, what do they want to do? What do they want to make them the most of their high school experience academically, but also extracurricular-wise? And so I know the rumors out there, you have to do a research paper. And this last fall, when we were talking with a rep from Brown University, I raised the question about research papers, and she just laughed. She goes, Chuck, we see so many students who are applying with research papers, it does not distinguish them in any way. So it's important that our students get involved in activities that they have a passion for, that they're really interested in. They should not think, oh, I heard I need to do this. Like I know for a long time the rumor was that you had to play an instrument, you had to play a sport, you had to do community service. It was like a checkbox.
Fencing got real big like 4 or 5 years ago, because I think somebody got into like Princeton or something, and fencing was their activity. And so
Right.
then it became we need to do fencing.
Right, right. So again, do what your son or daughter really, what they enjoy doing, be authentic when colleges are reviewing applications. They want to see an authentic application, and it's not a manufactured application.
And I think it becomes a conversation if everyone's doing a research paper. So if the 10 students that are applying to X university, 9 of them have research papers, and the one individual who decided, I always use this, but I don't know, scuba diving in Jeju for the summer, they seem a lot more appealing to that institution because they're doing kind of what they like, their interests. They didn't follow what they thought was the formula to get in. So the university could quickly see these 9 other students had heard, I need to do this, this, and this. Okay, do they really want to get to my institution, or are they really not being their authentic self? I really want the person who's authentic and really kind of just doing what they want. So you think yourself too, if you had 10 applications and 9 of them looked exactly the same and 1 was different, which one kind of stand out a little bit? Or 2 were different, which 2 would stand out to you more than the others? And just kind of think of that too when we're thinking like, Vicky's doing that, so Vicky's, I need to do what Vicky's doing. It doesn't work like that. It really should be individualized.
Okay, so this is going to be the first time we need to talk about college consultants. Okay, we've got to do it. And I want to say from the outset that I'm not anti-college consultants, right? There are plenty of good consultants out there, and like any service, right? Having the resources, the money, or just wanting to have somebody to help organize things, right? Like I have somebody who comes and cleans my house. I could certainly do it myself, but that's something that I'd rather not do. Okay? However, we need to talk about college consultants and some of the issues that come from them. Because why was fencing all of a sudden a big thing 5 years ago? Why were research papers all of a sudden the hot thing 2 years ago? Because a lot of parents use a lot of the same consultants. And they're working with 10, 15, 20, 25 students because each student is paying them X $1,000. And they need to deliver something. Right? If you're going to a consultant, you want a plan. You want an organization. You want ideas. And so they come up with new ideas. But you're not the only one they're going to tell that to. And we will see it in so many ways because we'll see activity lists and we'll see all of a sudden, why are 6 kids in this class doing fencing? That's not authentic. And if we can see it, the universities are going to see it because one of the things about KIS is most people come here for a specific goal, right? You are trying to go to U.S. institution, and usually selective institutions in the U.S. And so the number of universities that our students apply to, while there are thousands and thousands around the world, and even within the US, becomes a pretty small pool. And so the university reps who are reading your son or daughter's application, probably going to read 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 of their classmates' applications. And if they're doing all the same things, well, I kind of know why. And it's not because they're interested in fencing. And honestly, they might be, but they're going to get drowned out because the other 6 kids aren't. Right? And we see this, I remember, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, me and another counselor, we started noticing, like, are you getting a lot of personal essays that are about, as a child, my grandfather taught me about this, right? I remember being on my grandfather's knees while he showed me a picture book of some of the buildings that he had helped work on, and that's when I wanted to become an architect. And it was a version of that, like, my grandfather taught me about the Korean War, and that got me interested in history. My grandfather was showing me how to build a car, and that got me into engineering. It was the same formula, just slightly different. And again, if we can start to pick it out, the universities are going to pick it out. And as impressive as the student might be, that inauthenticity is going to be a difference, right? And so again, when we're thinking about college consultants, this isn't an anti-consultant spiel, right? But again, what are they doing for you, right? Because, and for your child more importantly, because that should be leading the way. If you're using one, they're a resource to help support, right? And again, there can be positives to that, but make sure you don't start going down a path where your child aren't making these decisions. There's also the case where they might be suggesting certain summer programs or SAT tutors or AP Hagwons, and they might be getting money on the back end from that. So they might be suggesting you do this and then recommending where you go, and you pay X thousands of dollars, and then they get 15% of that back to them. So again, understanding the motives and making sure that whatever decisions that you are making are for you and your child.
If I could just add to that, when Johns Hopkins visited last year, the representative said, Chuck, we can tell when a student's working with a college consultant. And again, it's not necessarily a negative thing, but because the way they package the applications, they tend to look similar. They're all applying for sociology at Johns Hopkins or whatever it may be. And so again, keep in mind that they understand that you're working with a consultant. That's not necessarily a negative thing, but it doesn't necessarily help your child either, I'd say.
And I'll just add a quick little personal story. Being new this year, I was meeting my seniors for the first time, and I had spent the last 6 years. So previously, I've been last 6 years in the United States in Minnesota, and students were sharing like, "Oh, I did a research project. I'm going to share this on my essay." Over 4 times. By the 5th time, maybe 1 or 2. I was like, wow, that's impressive. None of my US-based students have ever done a research project, never worked with a university professor, nor did they really attend summer programs either. I had maybe in my 10 years in the States, 2 that had gone to a summer program, and it fell flat on me. So think within number 5 of my students all kind of sharing the same thing, it fell flat. I was like, okay, I need a little, don't tell me your research projects first. Tell me other things about yourself. And just think of that as a first time introducing. And those admissions representatives will be doing exactly the same. They're going to be reading those, and if they continue to fall flat and being like, okay, I've seen this, or they put that on the top list as the first thing that they've done on their admission, as their extracurricular activities, then again, we're just showing that that we don't have that diversity within our own student body, right? We want to show what cool kids we have at KIS. I mean, they should actually just be doing what they're really interested in.
Okay, so this is going to jump right off of that. So copying the resume of a successful student who was admitted to a desired school is a smart strategy.
So this basically goes back to Vicki got into X university, so I'm going to do exactly what Vicki did, right? I'm going to do fencing. I'm going to do all the AP classes that she took. She applied for the sociology major. Again, copying that resume, you likely are probably not the only one that's copying that resume. So now an institution then sees that resume 5 times out of 6. The college application process, I think the messaging is it needs to be personalized. That does not indicate that you will get into that institution. Institutions also each year have a different mentality of what they need. They may have lost a big business class, so they will be looking to fill those business seats, or they didn't, vice versa. They have their own numbers and data that they need to fill that we are never given privy to, even if other people say that they are privy to that information, they are not. So just because I got into XU University does not mean that your child will too. There's a lot more to the uniqueness, their experiences, their activities that got it into it. And again, you don't want to be that copy and paste in that pile of applications to that university.
And here's the truth. And we have incredible students. And you'll have a student who gets into whatever dream university that they get into. And the other students might look, and they'll look at the easy things. Oh, they were in speech and debate. They did these APs. They did fencing. But those weren't the reasons that student got in. They were part of what they had done. That student got in because they were incredibly impressive, and it was the culmination of who they were, what they were applying to, what they had done, and what the university saw in that young person. Right? The copy-paste ends up being the kind of low-hanging fruit, which usually comes from okay, we're not doing enough. This person did all these things, so how can we just grab a couple of those things? But that's not actually going to solve anything, and if anything, it's just going to end up hurting them in the long run.
Can I jump in?
You can,
Hello,
Mr.
everybody.
Samuels. This is Dale Samuels.
I am Mr. Samuels. Yeah, you'll see, I think some of your students may have even watched these, and you may have even looked at them yourself. There's like these YouTube videos that say, the college essay that got me into Columbia, or the college essay that got me into Yale. And even the student who wrote that essay thinks that that was the thing that got them into that school. I'm not sure what the counselors have talked about before I arrived, but looking at holistic college admissions, it may or may not have been the essay that got them into the school. Yes, it's a part of it, but it's not the defining factor. And so you can use that analogy for anything. The activity that got me into Yale, the teacher letter of rec that got me into Columbia, the college essay that got me in. It's simply just not that simple. And universities are looking at everything and every part of the applicant to make that decision. And every applicant is seen as an individual rather than just a copy and paste version of somebody else.
Right. And I would just add, a few years ago when one of my students was admitted to Stanford, he came the next day and said, Mr. Chuck, all the moms are calling my mom saying, what did you do to get your kid into Stanford? Okay, and again, it's the diversity of the class they're looking to bring in. If everybody looked exactly like him, that's not what universities in the U.S. are looking for. They want a diverse group of students who are going to contribute to their community, student government, sports, music, drama, community service, who lived a variety of experiences. And so if everybody looked exactly like him, that's not what a school like Stanford wants. They want students who are going to be very different from each other. And so if your son or daughter gets into one of those top schools, you may get a call. Tell them, again, it's not what my son or daughter did that your son or daughter should also do.
It's who my daughter is
Right.
that got really into
Right.
university. Yeah.
Okay. Our next myth, another double. The SAT matters a lot. The SAT does not matter at all, right? This one, there is rightfully can be a lot of confusion, and this has changed a lot over the years. Dale Samuels, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit. Honestly, it depends. It depends on the school you're applying to. Sometimes you can look at the data, you can look at Maya Learning, and it clearly shows that SATs are an important part of the application for that particular school. And there are times when we look and the SAT has no significant factor at all in the college decision. One clear example for this would be the UC schools. The University of California does not look at SAT scores at all. If your student really wants to go to UCLA or really wants to go to UC Berkeley, they do not need to concern themselves with the SAT at all. If they are going to apply to other schools as well, then of course, think about it and take it, but it's not going to be the make or break factor, especially if they're applying to UC schools. We are finding that some schools, especially through COVID, most schools went to test optional, which really meant that it wasn't an important factor. They did not care whether if you didn't submit your SAT, it wasn't considered as part of the application. Now there are some schools who are increasingly and recently have gone back to requiring test scores. If that's a school that you're hoping to apply to, or your child is hoping to apply to, and they've said, actually, we want to see test scores, then that's an indication that it's important to them, or at least has a level of importance to them. So an example is the University of UPenn recently sent an email, which all counselors received, saying, we are going back to wanting and needing first-year students applying to the school to have SAT scores, which is a sign that for them, it seems to be an important factor. But that's not the case for all schools. And I think some of you have taken a picture of that, but behind me is a list of kind of individual schools' policies and how they view the SAT, and you can see that it's very different for each school. So what's going to be important is that you do some research. The other thing I want to say is that you are going to hear that SATs are very important, especially from private consultants and hagwons and academies, because that's where they make their money. And that's just being honest. They don't make any money by telling you the truth, by saying, actually, SATs can be important. Sometimes it's not so important. Oh, your child is applying to the UC schools. They don't need to study the SAT. They don't make any money from that conversation with you. Where they do make their money is by saying, you need a 1550. If your child does not have a 1550, they're not going to go to university. They're not going to go to a top school. And actually, they need a 1550. Here's a hagwon that will prepare your child for that 1550, and it costs $10,000. That's the reality of the world we live in, so that's why I'm being quite direct with that conversation. But it depends on what your child's aspirations are. It depends on how important it is.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to jump in with I'm not anti the SAT. I feel like I get that label because I've been here longer. I think Dale now on his third year is also like being more direct.
Yeah.
I'm 100% against your children doing any SAT prep prior to junior year. There's going to be a lot of pressure. You guys might already be thinking about it. You might have already signed up to send your child to a summer SAT hagwon over 9th grade summer. A lot of pressure for that, right? Spend the $10,000, and you know what? Their SAT score will improve, 100%, right? You dedicate 500 hours over the summer to a singular 2-hour test, you're going to get a better score, right? The reason they shouldn't be doing that, right, is just thinking about that time and that resource, right? Because A, they might not need it, right? So you didn't need to spend that time or the money. 2, as they get older and go through high school here, which is rigorous, they're going to be better at math, at reading, writing, as they get through Algebra 2 and pre-calculus, as they get into AP Lang. So their skills are going to be at a higher level to start from. They're then going to have the opportunity to take a PSAT, right, which they don't need to study for. They're already doing that in school. Have an idea of what their score is, what their strengths are, so they can have a more focused plan of studying. And again, the same thing with, as we were talking about the consultants, at that point, if they are getting into junior year, they have an idea of where they might be applying, they have an idea of what their score is, and they know that they're going to need the SAT and they have a certain score in mind, great. Utilize those resources, right? And going to any tutor, test prep, studying Khan Academy, all of those things will help, right? But those 500 hours in 9th grade summer didn't need to be spent. They could be used for so many other things. And again, you spend 500 hours on anything and you're going to get better, right? There's also a number of universities that will flat out say, we will not look at an SAT score from 9th or 10th grade. Which kind of makes sense, because logically, why am I evaluating this senior on a test they took 2-3 years ago? Right? Carnegie Mellon just flat out won't look. And every year I've got a senior who's applying, and they're like, hey, so I've got a 1570, but it's from August of 10th grade. Do I need to take it again? And I'm like, yeah, you do need to take it again. Like the schools that you're applying to, you've got to take it. And they're like, oh, yeah. And so again, all of this, it isn't to say the SAT isn't important. And for a lot of our students, they probably will need an SAT score. But it's, does your specific child for their specific path need it? When do they need it? And how can they maximize their time? Right? And they're going to hear from their friends. I know this is the big one in 9th grade. 9th grade going into 10th grade, it's just an insane amount of students that are going to spend their whole summer. It's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5-6 days a week, 10 weeks. And you're going to feel the pressure from other parents who are sending their kid. Your friends, your children are going to feel that pressure from their friends who are doing it, and they're going to feel behind. And then the kids are going to come back from the summer. They're going to take that August SAT, and they're going to get a high score. And again, you or your child is going to feel like they haven't done enough. But think of all the other things that they could have done with that time, money, and then down the road, it's going to take a lot less to get that score they need if they need it.
I also think of time. In 3 years, things could vastly change too. The college admissions process is continuously changing. We are seeing new things happening. AI is now becoming a big component. What does that look like? So with time, just allow your students to be doing what they should be doing in their moment of time. As a 9th grader, let them be 9th graders, 10th graders. And then when that piece comes to be important in 11th grade, we'll see what that looks like and really provide the best information at that point in time. But we've got some time to get there and see. And again, really building up. You'll often hear a lot of these students on Instagram and social media, like, what's your passion? Find your passion. I don't really like the passion thing. It really should be what's your interest. So in the beginning of your high school career, that's what you should be finding. Find your interests. To be passionate about something, that's a pretty intense word. I don't even know if you asked me if I was passionate, what I would say. I have interests. I like reading, I like animals, I like this. But to be passionate about something and ask a 15-year-old, let them just find interest. So with the SAT, just like, and maybe I'm sidetracking, but it's let the years kind of just authentically happen rather than just focusing on this one piece of item. And if you saw back on one of the NACACs too, how far it is on some of the college applications process, sometimes it's not even a high stakes in that application piece.
Right. When students ask me what should I do in the summer after my 9th grade year, I say, read books. People who love to read generally do well in the SAT. And that can be, you're not doing SAT prep in a sense, but you are, because you're developing vocabulary that's going to help you out in your English classes in high school, when you get to university. The more you can learn through books, you're going to be better prepared for the application process. And so, like Dale was saying, UPenn just announced yesterday we're requiring SATs. We just got an email from Emory too saying they're not requiring SATs. They're going to remain test optional. So I'd say the vast majority of the U.S. universities are still test optional. It's the highly rejective universities that are going back to some standardized testing because they found that they received so many more applications from students because they were not requiring testing. And so that drove up the number of applications they received, which made it harder for them as they're reviewing applications. So this is putting one more barrier in a sense. So I think they'll see their applications probably go down once they're starting to require more SAT testing.
Okay. So we've talked about this a little bit. I was told that my child should apply to a specific program at a specific university because it'll be easier for them to get in. Mr. Krugler, you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, that is called the backdoor entry by universities. They understand that the universities, if they want to apply to, they really want to do journalism at Northwestern, but they think it's going to be harder to get into the Medill School of Journalism there. I'll apply to sociology, and then I'll transfer into Medill. The universities, like you cannot transfer into Medill once you're at Northwestern. They have a no transfer policy. So again, they're very aware of that. Of that process. And so again, it's producing an authentic application. Do your son or daughter's activities line up with what they want to pursue at university? Are their teacher recommendations supportive of that particular program? If everything they've done in high school is journalism, and then they're applying for sociology, the admissions officer reading the application is going to be, this doesn't quite make sense to me. So again, we want every part of the application to make sense. It all should be congruent. It all should support each other. And so again, applying for an easier what's considered an easier program at a university does not necessarily work out for a university.
I loved Georgia Tech, I think 2 years ago, sent out an email, and it was just, hey, we are never going, if you don't get into computer science as a freshman, like when you're applying from high school, you're never getting into our program. We don't care if you go to MIT and you spend 3 years there and then try to transfer in, it's never happening. And it really came from the number of students they had that wanted to be in computer science at Georgia Tech, who would apply to these other programs, get there, immediately in the fall apply to transfer in, and they'd be like, no, we don't have, you can't get in there. They'd be upset. They're not studying their major and their future career path, and they'd transfer out to another school, which the university doesn't want that. That doesn't help them. And so I really appreciated how direct they were in just coming out and saying, look, if you want to go to this program, great, apply to that program. If you're trying to get in another way, we're just going to tell you right now, it'll never, ever happen. So just, if you're going to try to do that, then go to another university. And as Chuck was saying, there's a number of universities that have those no transfer policies, and most of them just internally, that's how they make their decisions, and they just operate that way. And unfortunately, I wish they were more blunt, just to help.
And it goes back to that copy and paste, right? Again, so then everybody knows we can get into Vicky College if we apply sociology. Now we are again going to have 9 applications with that same thing, and then the university is going to be like, what is happening? Who's telling you this? Why is this occurring? So again, that it all really comes back to this copy and paste is just really not, you really need to be focusing on what's best for your kiddo, that personalization.
And I think students who are doing that are strategizing. They're trying to come up with a strategic way to get into a particular school. Rather than figuring out, is this a good fit for me? It's like, what's the easiest way to get in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, there are certain times we notice themes in our applications where we notice more students applying to certain programs or more students applying to certain universities. And we know it's because there's a rumor, somebody said, some consultants have said, collectively, that actually this year it's easier to apply to this school. Or this year it's easier to apply for this major at this school. And we see a theme and we're like, hold up. For the years I've been at KIS, there's never been that many applications to that school. And this year, suddenly there's a rise. Or suddenly students saying, oh, Mr. Samuels, I want to change one of my schools from this school to this school. And we now, we can't confirm it, but we're thinking perhaps there's some consultancy, there's some rumors suggesting that students should change their application. And I would say that these applications then become inauthentic. They're not personalized. It's more trying to game the system. Perhaps admissions officers will recognize that, and it really does not help create a good application, a strong application for students to be accepted.
Another way this happens, I can promise you, I can look at the final stats of our class from this year, right, when we get through and all the regular decisions. And there's going to be a handful of very selective universities where we're going to have a high number of students who got in, right? Every year there's different, it's like, oh, wow, did this 3% of students get into this school and we had 3 get in this year. I can guarantee the next year the applications from the class below will go up. And it's only because it's like, well, that's a really selective school, it's a great name, and we have a better chance. But no, those 3 students happen to be a good fit. And then the numbers, so then we have, we go from having 12 students who apply to, X Ivy League school to 25, and then none get in, and then it's like, wait, why are our numbers so low? And it's like, well, because 15 of you shouldn't have ever applied there. You just did it because you saw the number went up. So again, that authenticity and that gaming of the system, that kind of reverse engineering, that just gets in the way, right? And causes a lot of stress and anxiety. Taking additional AP exams outside of school helped my child get into university. Who wants to jump on this one?
I can do it. If you
Go
okay,
for
okay,
it.
Yeah, I think that is a rumor that's out there, that more is better. And I think, as Ronnie likes to say, more is not better, better is better, that our students excel in whatever they do. AP scores are not used in the admissions process. So taking an AP score outside, or an AP course outside of KIS and taking the exam will not help in the admission decision. It may help the student receive college credit once they're at the university, but it's not going to help them in the admission decision. And so, because what college is looking for, they're looking at our transcript. How did the student challenge themselves, like we said earlier? How many AP courses did they take? And then they're going to look at how the student did in the AP course at KIS, not necessarily at the AP score they got on their final exam that they took that's moderated by College Board. And so again, this is a list from the National Association. The AP scores are below portfolio. Portfolio is listed as a 4.9. I think AP scores was like 1.1 or something like that. So again, it's not going to be considered in the admission process. So spending all that time outside of school preparing for another exam, they could be putting that time into their schoolwork here or their extracurricular activities here. It's again, how are they using their time? Colleges do not necessarily want to see a student taking an AP course outside of KIS. They know that we offer a robust number of AP courses. If the students maximize the number of AP courses here, that's enough for the colleges. They don't want them doing anything more than that.
If you remember, sorry, did you read?
No, go ahead.
If you remember me speaking about that school profile, we list all the AP courses, and that's the only AP classes that they want to see. That the ones that are taken at KIS are the ones on your student's transcript. Another thing that I often hear is, I should take this AP course because it looks harder, or it's harder, and the university will find it more rigorous. No. It really is to you. Is that something of your interest? If you think Calculus BC looks better than AP Physics, but you enjoy AP Physics, but you're going to take AP BC, why? Take the AP Physics class. Take what you enjoy, because it doesn't matter to the universities. The universities want to see what you like. And if you don't like math and you're taking BC, and then you end up getting a bad grade, and then it becomes a whole kerfuffle, like, you should have just taken what you wanted in the beginning. And I think that's really, really a point. Don't read into it too much. Really just do what you like, because it doesn't matter.
I think a part of wanting to take more APs comes down to perhaps a fear of taking risk. And why I say that is because a lot of our students are really good test takers. You know, by grade 11, grade 12, most of our students are taking 2 to 5 APs per year. So they're going to take 2 to 5 AP tests in that year and do very well. A lot of our students would have already taken the SAT and got good scores. The universities know that your child is already a good test taker based on the tests that they take in school, AP tests and SATs. Doing another test outside of school and say, hey, by the way, I'm still a good test taker, doesn't speak anything more to that application. So that time that your child would have spent studying more outside of school when they're already good at studying. They're doing great at KIS, so we know they're good at studying. Spending more time on something that's comfortable for them really doesn't stretch them or help them to stand out. What I would encourage is to challenge yourself in an area that you're not so comfortable in. Learn a brand new skill. Go traveling. Visit a country where they don't have life is not as comfortable as Korea, and now you have to learn something about yourself. As Chuck said, read books. There's so many things that you could do with that time where your child can challenge themselves in a new way. Simply doing another test does not tell the university anything new, especially when your children are really good test takers already.
And to that too, if your child, we often hear, well, I'd like to take more APs, right? Like I wish I could take AP biology. Well, then don't take the AP biology. Look at the context of biology, what you like, and go find something else. Go work at the zoo. Go work with animals. Comparative government's not offered that year. Then read books about comparative government so that you have something to tell the institution. Like, I wasn't able to take this comparative government in my class, so instead I don't know, rewrote the Constitution. I don't know. But something of that nature. You still are kind of focusing on your interest, but you didn't need to take that AP class. You just twisted it into a different way of what your interest is.
I've got a student who is in that exact same situation. He wanted to take AP psychology, but couldn't. And so he was like, oh, Mr. Samuel, shall I take the psychology test outside of school? I said, no, like, if you're interested in psychology, study psychology in your own time. Be interested, watch YouTube videos, watch podcasts, read articles. And then he came back to me like 2 months later and he was like, Mr. Samuel, I've learned so much. I've got this podcast I've been listening to. Cool. He's recommending podcasts to me. He's learned so much for the love of learning, for the love of the subject. And it's allowed him to see psychology in a new way. If he's just studying for the AP psychology test, it's so linear because he's just trying to find the right answer. But this way he was exploring psychology in ways he had never experienced before, and it opened up his mind to so many new ways of thinking. And to have a student coming to my office excited about stuff they've learned is really refreshing.
That's cool.
And when it comes to a college interview or a college essay, that excitement is going to come out in the interview. You know, that excitement's going to come out in his essay. I did this and I learned this and this and this. And it's infectious. If he just did the AP, and he's like, yeah, I was interested in AP Psych, so I studied for the AP Psych test in my own time and I got a 5. There's no energy and love and fire in that, which I think is the difference.
Cool.
All right, I think we have one more, and I think this is my favorite one. KIS has been placed on a blacklist for a university. Love that.
No.
I've been hearing this since the first day I got to KIS. I remember my very first class of seniors when I got here, and I had a young man get into Stanford. And I remember the first thing I heard, I was like, you know, I'm new to KIS, and I'm meeting this kid. He was a wonderful young man. And the first thing I heard from another parent was, oh, thank God we're not on the blacklist anymore. I was like, okay, wait, I guess I'm missing some context. What do you mean the blacklist. Well, we haven't had anyone get in for the last 3 years. Okay, and more information? Well, yeah, so we think we're, we must have been blacklisted. Stanford's a really hard school to get into. I think that might be the reason. And every year or two, I hear this in some other way. I heard it from one of my former students 2 years ago, sent me a message the day EDs came out. And she was like, wait, is something going on? Everybody's talking about KIS is on the blacklist for Yale. I was just like, okay, it's getting to one of my former students who's already at college from the community on the day the EDs come out. That was the response. And it's, again, we were talking earlier about GPAs, an easy number that's an easy answer, right? Okay, 3.8 is better than 3.7. Nobody got in. Well, it must be because the school is on, that's an easy thing to try to understand. Even though there's no data that supports that, there's no information, right? And let's live in a world where there is a hypothetical blacklist, and they're all going to jump in and be like, yeah, there's no such thing. Schools don't get put on blacklists. But if there was, how would a parent or a child at the high school 10,000 miles away know the interworkings of the university admissions? This is really, and the reason we end with this one, the reason that I love this rumor is because it's really the kind of manifestation of all the fears and rumors and the way we can go from a very nuanced understanding of college admissions way over here. Now we're in Fast and the Furious 10 and we've got the most extreme answer that we can possibly have, right? And all of this is that fear and that worry and trying to understand a very nuanced process. College admissions it's a human process. There's people on the other end of this. There's institutional priorities that vary wildly from year to year and from university to university. And all of your children and all the children around the world are so different and unique. And that's a really hard thing for any one person to fully grasp. And so sometimes we look for these easy to understand answers, when the case is often just these students didn't get in this particular year. That particular student didn't get into this university. And all of those things are okay. And the next year that will change, and the next student who applies will be different. And again, there's a lot in this process that we can't control. And all of these myths and rumors are about that. It's about the things that we can't control, that anxiety and that fear, and somebody else who's going to make a decision about your child. And we think they're amazing, and you think they're amazing, and we want these great things, and then somebody's going to say no. And that's hard, and that hurts. And so we want clean, clear plans. If I take these APs and I do this summer program and I get this SAT score and I apply for this major at this school and then I'm gonna get in. And then they don't. And everything that we're trying to do is just, again, it's gonna be okay. And when you hear these things, we want you to come to us and have these conversations.
And I just really want to celebrate. Our students are great kids, and I really want them to be excited about the universities that they get accepted to. I shared in our meeting, and what I often share with a lot of students, these students are applying to highly selective universities, some with 5% acceptances. If there's a room of 100 people, 95 are not getting accepted, right? And so I want the students not to focus on, I want the students to focus on, I got accepted to a school that really wants me, and that is excited to have me, and let's kind of boast into that rather than focusing on all the negative pieces of I didn't get into X, Y, Z. Yeah, you and 95 other people didn't get into that, but let's celebrate where you did, and let's focus on the positives and really dive into that, because I want students to feel excited about where they're going and not to focusing on where they get. This will truly also be the first time your students and seniors hear a rejection. And so that just naturally becomes difficult. And we'll talk about that in years to come. But embrace the rejection, but then also let's celebrate. Like, your kids are going to go to great places. They will, I promise you. And they should be really excited about where they're going, because any school that they're applying to on their list should be exciting for them to go to.
And I would just say, I think the myths come because the U.S. admissions process is so subjective. I think, like Dale's from the UK, I don't hear as many rumors about admission to UK universities. Right?
Are there?
I think because it's more prescribed, But here, it's very subjective. And it can change from one year to another, as Ronnie said. And so I can share a story from one of the years I was at Seoul Foreign School. I had 2 students who applied early to Stanford, and they did not get in. But then 2 students from another international school, just north of us here, did get in. And so I contacted my admissions person there that I knew really well. I said, can you help me understand this decision? My 2 kids are outstanding, and these 2 kids got in. And he said, Chuck, schools do not get kids in. Kids get themselves in. He said, the kids from SIS, their writing was more vivid, more lively. They resonated with the admission committee. And your kids are strong kids. They're going to go to great schools, which they did, but it just wasn't their year. And so we had no acceptances that year. Well, the next year we had 3 early acceptances to Stanford. And so again, it varies from one year to another. The kids get themselves in. The counselors don't get kids in. The schools don't get kids in. We're not on a blacklist. It's the kids getting themselves in. And again, with an acceptance rate of 3%, so many different high schools around the world, kids are applying from. They're hard decisions. I would not want to work in Stanford's admissions office because they have so many tough decisions to make. They have so many outstanding applicants. I went to a luncheon with the University of Chicago last August, and they said they had, 45,000 applications, and 40,000 of the students could have done the work at U Chicago. But they just can't take 40,000 students. They have to make some tough decisions. And that's hard when we hear the no on our end, the students and us. We hurt for our students too when they don't get in. But we celebrate with them where they do get in. We want to focus on the positives that way.
So, this is all we do. We all got degrees in this so that we could work with teenagers to help them navigate this process. We have about 24, 25, 26 students per grade that we each work with. We have so much time, and 9th grade through 12th grade, and we are a private college preparatory high school in which the majority of the focus is on going to selective universities in the United States. That's what we're working with them for, right? We know that. When we say don't take the SAT in 9th grade, it's not because we have some agenda where we don't want them to take. It's just because we don't think that's the right time, right? We want all the things that we're doing is so that they can be ready, so they can be excited about where they're applying, so they will hear yes, so we can celebrate with them, so they can be excited. And so for years after, we can hear about all the amazing things they're doing, and when they come back, we get to see them. We do have those goals. But our job is also to give you guys good information, to help your children to navigate this. And I can fully say that every year I have become more direct in what I say, because I think that information needs to cut through all the other information that's getting out there. That is not always helpful, right? And again, that's not to say that we are the be-all, end-all, and that we know every answer, right? But we're certainly trying to, right? We don't get extra money if you go to a summer camp. There's no kickbacks from SAT hogwans. It doesn't matter where your kids get into university. We just want them to get into the right university. We want them to be excited. We want them to be the best versions of themselves when they're ready to apply to universities. That's our whole goal here.
And I would just add to that, if you hear rumors or myths that you're like, I'm not sure if this is true, contact your child's counselor. Okay, we are the ones who are in touch with the admissions people. We have probably the best information. The consultants are not in touch with admissions people. They may read this or that, but again, we can't believe everything we read on the internet, correct? And so again, be in touch with us, because we're the ones who are direct line to the universities. And if we don't know the answer, we will contact universities to find out. And so we are here to help you as parents as well, but don't, again, spread the rumor mill. Don't contribute to it. Come to us and let us know how we can help you.
So there's a bunch of kind of resources, right? Universities, calling them, looking at their websites, coming when they have presentations. In the next slide, we'll show you a couple that are coming up in the future. And we always tell the students, like, universities are not trying to hide any information, right? They already get more applications than they know what to do with. And when they're reading 45, 65, I think UCLA got 150,000 applications this year. They don't want one application that doesn't have the right information or the student's not a good fit. They only want to read applications for those who are meeting their qualifications, their requirements, and who would be good fits, because that's just a lot of work, right? So they're not going to hide anything. There's no tricks, there's no secret codes or anything. If they will be very direct, they'll put that information out. You can call them. Again, they will visit here oftentimes. Make sure your children, you yourself, are taking advantage of those opportunities. Maya Learning, this is your first child to go through KIS, you might not know what Maya Learning is. That is where we track historical data for KIS graduates. We will take parents through that. We'll also take all the students through that. That will be very valuable for having insights. We'll send out some login information. Parents have access to that too. The KIS School Profile, which is online, which is available in the counseling office, which we can send out if anybody wants to see that. We update that every single year. And then us. We are not scary, hopefully. At least they're not. Sometimes I am. We love having these conversations. Like, honestly, like, I love hearing, like, hey, so I heard this, or hey, we're not sure what to do here, or hey, can we get some advice? Or, hey, we're working with a consultant and here's what they're telling me, right? Great. Don't hide that information from us. I've had lots of great conversations with parents and students who are working with consultants or working with outside advisors. And I'm still going to just give you the same information. And if you go, yeah, we're going to listen to them, that's totally fine. That is what you get to do. That is what your children get to do. All we're going to do is give the best information we can. But we want them and we want you to make decisions that you feel best about. And that doesn't have to be agreeing with us or listening to us. Right? And at the end of this, you're like, yeah, we're still going to go to that SAT Hog One over the summer. Okay. That's what you've chosen to do. Right? All we can do is still give you the information that we think is valuable. And then hopefully that will help.
Chuck, you want to talk about our...
So upcoming events, on April 1st, we are bringing in an admissions officer from the University of Chicago to lead a mock admissions session with our parent community. And that'll be a session where they'll be probably reviewing 3 applications, like dummy applications. Parents will be broken to admissions committees. And we'll read through the applications. It gives you a good insight into how admissions decisions are made. And she, coming from a very selective school, has been on their admissions staff for a long time. And so I'm looking forward to learning from her about insights into the admissions process. On April 11th, we have Wake Forest University who's going to come in to give a talk to parents on the holistic admissions process. We used that term earlier in the presentation. The 15th, we have a college tour group coming in, and Rochester Institute of Technology is the leader of that group, and they're going to talk about career paths in the U.S. for STEM majors, computer science, engineering. So again, you could hear what possible careers there are. And then April 17th, we have a grade 8 parent coffee with us. Just to hear what questions you have. It's a very informal gathering. We sit around, we send out a survey ahead of time, what questions do you have? But then so many questions come up during the parent coffee that we're there as a resource to, again, help as you prepared your son or daughter to enter high school next year.
I would just like to further encourage you to go to the mock admissions for the U Chicago. Because when you submit an application or you're preparing an application with your children, you think that the person reading it is going to hyper-focus on everything. Oh, there's the SAT score, and they're going to spend 5 minutes comparing that SAT score to this SAT score. and then this one B plus that they got, and you're gonna think, oh, they're gonna look at that and it's gonna be so ugly. By going to mock admissions, you act as the admissions officer, and you're gonna see how much time they really spend focusing on those little details that some of our students and parents get really nervous about. And actually, you're gonna be like, oh, okay. And you just move on. Oh, okay, they've got this grade, fantastic. Let's look at the letter of recommendation, let's look at the essay, fantastic. Oh, this student did this, that's awesome. And it's actually a real smooth process where they look at everything and they're not hyper-focused on these little things that I think some of our parents and students get really anxious about. But unless you do the mock admissions, you're not going to truly understand it. So I really want to encourage you to go to that.
And you'll see, there's a bunch of things coming up in April. Spring and fall, universities are traveling. And so when they're coming here, they'll visit with our students, they'll set up booths, sometimes they'll do presentations for students, and we'll offer them the opportunity to do parent presentations. So for the next 3-4 years for some of you, just kind of have that expectation that there's always going to be more universities coming in the spring, in the fall. You probably won't be able to attend all of them, and that's okay. But we would encourage you to go to them when you can, right? And especially encourage your children, maybe not in 9th grade, it's not the be-all, end-all, but, 10th grade and certainly by 11th grade, they should be having some of these conversations when these admissions officers are on campus, because that 5-10 minutes is great to hear directly from them. And just know, I don't want you to look at this and be like, okay, I've got to go to these 4, it's our only opportunity. Right. There's going to be lots of opportunities over the years.
Because we do 2 mock admission sessions per year, usually one in the fall, one in the spring.
And when you come, have the courage to ask those difficult questions because the university themselves can tell you everything directly because they're the source. So ask some tough questions.
And with that, that is our presentation. So we thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.